tax rates were higher years ago than what they are now. So, the Roth probably didn't get near the attention that it does now because tax rates were much higher.
We all need to save and invest for retirement. And one of the most commonly utilized tools, one of our best tools to do so, is the employer sponsored plan, our 401ks. But still, there's a lot of questions about 401ks, their benefits and disadvantages, their merits, and then how to utilize the 401k effectively to build for lasting financial confidence. We'll talk about it today on Your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services, Chris McIntire. Chris, we appreciate the time, and I bet that you see a lot of 401ks and help people through a lot of questions with them.
Yeah, we certainly do. It's a major part of our business as people transition into retirement, and we help them process direct rollovers into IRAs to avoid any taxation, and then assist them in creating, let's say an income plan, for example, because they're going from the accumulation phase into the distribution phase. And, many times we start that income phase 6 months ahead of them retiring because we want to build up some dividends and interest in a cash bucket and then just continue to pay out of that cash bucket. And ideally, in a perfect world, is not invade their principal, on their investment account. We also obviously can use the annuity side of things to help create that lifetime income stream as well. So try not to hold too much bias in everything we do, but moving those 401ks over is a very big part of our business.
So, actually, starting a little income before we even retire.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So like if we got in a sleeve in dividend stocks, for example, or, some bonds or notes that pay interest, have that interest, have those dividends pay into a cash account.
Putting things in motion ahead of time. So the ball is already rolling once we get into retirement, I guess, right, Chris?
Absolutely. Yep. We want to be proactive instead of reactive when we can.
Makes sense. Okay, well, let's get into the conversation here of how to plan effectively, the tools that we have, how to utilize them, and again, one of the biggest ones, the 401k. It could be a couple other names, right? The 403b, the 403a, the 457 plan, a TSP. They all sort of have a lot of similarities and probably could be described with the same descriptions that we are going to talk about on today's program, right?
Yeah, they certainly can. Some of them are like brothers and sisters or cousins. So, those employer sponsored plans and, an IRA is not an employer sponsored plan. Okay. Footnote to that, I am self-employed. So I have a self-employed plan or a SEP IRA, and it's just a smaller version of a 401k, by and large, but the traditional IRAs that, people are rolling their money into out of their 401ks are, not typically sponsored by employers.
Well, again, we are talking with Chris McIntire, president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. If you have questions about your planning, your retirement accounts, your investments, your 401ks, especially as we're talking about on today's program, give McIntire Retirement Services a call. As a courtesy complimentary service, they offer to put together for you your personalized plan, your game plan for retirement. And you can start that conversation by calling 419 332 0532. 419 332 0532. So, Chris, is the reason why there are so many questions about 401k because they are so widely available, because they are so, the reason they are so popular is the broad availability of 401ks?
Yes, yeah, without question. And, and 403Bs for the teachers and the nurses and that type of thing as well is, it's easy to have money come out of your paycheck on a regular basis and go into your 401k where it goes into a typically a selection of mutual funds. And I think in present day, a lot of people use those target date retirement funds that we've spoken about. So, your retirement lifestyle 2030, 2035, most people will match that up with the year that they think they're going to be getting close to retirement. And I think they have the mindset that, well, that's going to be a lot safer account than me just picking some blind mutual funds. If I'm going into a retirement lifestyle fund, then it's going to automatically adjust and get more conservative as I get older. And that's true to a point.
We'll talk about the merits of it, pros
Yeah.
and cons to everything out there. So, Chris, we hear a lot about the benefits of 401ks, and a generation now has utilized them to build more wealth than really any previous generation have had. We have a greater personal net worth by and large, and yet still have questions and concerns and doubts and worries and uncertainty about retirement. So, again, speaking about the pros and the cons of 401ks, just like all investments, they have some of both. So, we'll discuss that today. But again, if you'd like to make sure you're utilizing yours to the best and greatest extent, if you've got questions or concerns on how to do so, call McIntire Retirement Services 419 332 0532. 419 332 0532. So, Chris, let's talk about the advantages. You mentioned like the automatic nature of those contributions. That's a fantastic advantage to the 401k.
Yeah, it certainly is, Peter. And then you also get that, it's kind of that forced savings, if you will. You don't miss the money because it's coming out of your check before you see it. Uh, and then you also can get a company match. So they may be giving you some free dollars as well. And I think Peter and I, being self-employed, would probably encourage most of you, look, take advantage of the free money. If they're going to give you something for nothing, go ahead and take it. And not necessarily for nothing. You're trading your time for, your paycheck,
I was going to
obviously.
say you're working for it one way or another. You just don't get it unless you put some money in, right, Chris?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Peter. Your time is your value for sure. And my staff's going to listen to this and probably make a comment to me.
Uh-huh.
But these are very popular tools, and they really have helped people, earn and save a lot of money, get this big nest egg. Seven-figure IRA accounts are very common these days because people have been able to put more and more dollars into them as the government has expanded these. The other side of that point is less and less pensions.
Mhm.
Right. So you need to save extra dollars to create that income that the pension used to give you. And that's kind of our niche in the marketplace as well. We help with all of that.
Is that another reason why 401ks have become so popular, almost universal, Chris? Is that companies enjoyed getting rid of the liability and the obligation of those pensions that they used to offer us?
Yeah, without a doubt, you look at some of those Fortune 500 companies and, how much money they are saving by not being in the lifetime income business, if you will.
hmm Well, we also, as you mentioned, we have the availability to capture the growth of the market, investment rates of return on our money, investment growth, another significant advantage, and then some tax benefits on top of that as well. Like to round out the list of the advantages of the 401k, Chris, access to the stock market and then tax benefits. Maybe we have some choice about those tax benefits more than we used to as well. One side or the other, though, we do have some tax advantages.
Yeah, and especially if you're, more highly compensated, the ability to defer some of that income into a 401k and not be taxed on it can lower your overall tax base. The conventional wisdom there is when you retire, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. Then you can pull out your IRA dollars as needed, or you can do Roth IRA conversions as well and some tax planning. And probably one of the major advantages there, Peter, to add to what you were saying, you got exposure to the stock market. And the nice thing is when you're investing in your 401k, that money's coming out at intervals, specific intervals. And then when the stock market takes a dip, like it did in basically the month of April of 2025 here, and you made your contributions, well, you bought a lot more shares, when the market was down 17% or so, plus or minus. than you did when it was up 17%. So that dollar cost averaging, another major advantage, buddy.
And diversification. You don't have to put all your money into one investment, although starting to pivot toward the drawbacks of the 401k. Chris, not the full spectrum of the financial world generally available inside of 401ks.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably a good example would be if you wanted to be a little more concentrated in the tech sector or the AI space. You're only going to have so many choices inside your 401k for that, right? They've got a select group of mutual funds typically, and outside into the IRA space, you have individual stocks, you have CDs, you have your annuities, you have your your exchange traded funds, your individual bonds. Just, I'm not going to call it limitless, but a much, much larger selection and choices for you to get some true diversification.
So limited investment choices inside of the 401ks, as well as, Chris, limitations on how we can access our money inside of those 401ks. Once the dollars go in, limited access, penalties for early withdrawal, and of course, the tax implications.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And we're getting, we're starting to see a little bit more on the Roth 401k side of things. More companies are offering these as well. The company match can go into the Roth 401k now as well. So, with a Roth 401k, your contributions you put into it. So if you put in $10,000 over the course of a year, you have to pay tax on that $10,000, on April 15th when you do your tax return. In the traditional 401k, if you put in $10,000, you didn't have to pay any tax on that. So, you get a little bit lower income from a taxable income space. Sorry, I'm trying to find the word there. And on the Roth 401k, your income's going to look greater on your tax return because you did not get to deduct those contributions.
And nowadays, more often than not, Chris, we have the choice to choose between traditional and tax deductible or the Roth side where we do pay the tax.
Mhm.
I think that there are a lot of people now, Chris, looking back at their lump sum savings, their life savings that they have been able to amass and regretting the decision perhaps to defer and delay. I don't think we should be kicking ourselves there though, right? Because the Roth option was not around nearly as long as the 401k and the traditional tax deductible side has been.
Yeah, yeah. And to that point there, Peter, tax rates were higher years ago than what they are now. So, the Roth probably didn't get near the attention that it does now because tax rates were much higher.
So we
And
should not be kicking ourselves for building up our savings on that tax deferred side. It just now might be a good time to think about managing the tax bill.
yeah, yep, that's a great point. Yep, managing the tax bill. Had some clients in this week, and we were talking about Roth conversions that we'll do a little bit later on in the year. And it's a very favorable year here for a lot of individuals to do some additional tax planning, such as Roth conversions. Most of the time, those things get done a little bit later in the year where you know how much income you've had, in case you get an emergency and you have to pull $50,000 out of your IRA to bail your one of your kids out of a financial dilemma or something along those lines. If you do it later in the year, you can probably postpone that dilemma into the next tax year if you've already done your big Roth conversion, if you will.
Well, continuing on with the downside, the drawbacks, the cons of 401k, a big one is control. Chris, as you just hinted at, we do not have full control. The market could go down. We don't control the market. The employer actually controls the choices that we can select from for how to invest. And then the IRS also has some element of control. We can't touch it until 59 and a half. And then 401ks are subject to those required minimum distributions at a certain point in time. So tax control also a big element.
Yes, absolutely. And even if let's just say you're 62 years old, you just retired and you said, "Hey, I'm going to take $10,000 out of my out of my 401k account. Well, the mandatory tax withholding on that is 20%. Okay. Well, if your effective tax rate is 12 or 13, then why do you want to withhold 20%?
Mhm.
Yeah, you'll get it back if you overpay it, but the government doesn't give you anything on it. Whereas in an IRA account, you can set your federal and state income tax that you're going to take out, or none at all, depending on how you pay your taxes.
What about the impact of market volatility, Chris? Do you come across many people who are worried about how market volatility could impact their balance in their 401ks?
Yeah, especially this year because everything in the headlines around the tariffs, the trade war, inflation, geopolitical risk and whatnot. What's China going to do? Russia, Ukraine. I mean, there's a lot of what do we want to say? I don't want to call them boiling pots, but they're getting warm, right?
A whole lot of different factors. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when that happens, their emotions go back to, the COVID crash of the market in March of 2020, the 2008 financial crisis, and then prior to that, the tech bubble, 2000, 2001, 2002. We really haven't had, much of an old-fashioned recession here since 2000, 2001, 2002, because the government really didn't come in and manipulate the outcome there like they did in the 2008 financial crisis. Okay. And then especially more so, even more rapidly in the COVID crisis that we had. The speed and the amount of money they threw at the system kind of buoyed up the economics there. And, the other side of that is it also led to our inflation and 11% interest rates and some of the issues that we deal with right now with where the market is.
Again, we are talking with Chris McIntire, president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. Subject of the program today, your 401k or employer sponsored retirement plan. Even though plan is in the name, the 401k is a tool. It does not necessarily constitute a true plan for retirement. But if you'd like to construct that plan, get your own personalized plan, bringing in all of the pieces to see how your picture for retirement will look, a blueprint for retirement, pick up the phone and give McIntire Retirement Services a call. They offer this as a courtesy complimentary service, designing your game plan for retirement. 419 332 0532 419 332 0532. So, Chris, in the effort of defining our retirement a little better, is it fair to say that the 401k is a pretty good tool for getting us through our working career and building and accumulating, but maybe not the best tool for retirement purposes?
Yeah, without question, I would say that, due to the complexities and the limited availability of funds that they have in there, you're certainly going to want more choices once you retire, especially for creating income. And, we're not here to bash your employer or anything like that. It's just the nature of the business. What gets you to retirement isn't necessarily what gets you through retirement. It's probably a good analogy there, buddy.
I mean, employers recognize this, though, Chris. Is that not the very reason why most employers, right within their plan, allow employees at 59 and a half, even if they're going to continue to contribute and work and participate into the future, they allow those employees to take more control over the 401k dollars and roll them over to their IRA because the employer recognizes that maybe the 401k is not the best tool for the future.
That's a good point there, Peter. And, like you say, when you hit 59 and a half, you have that, kind of one of those, qualifying events that allow you to take, sometimes all of your 401k, sometimes a portion of it, and roll it into an IRA where like you can begin to create your income plan, or just look at different investments if you really want to focus on, cryptocurrency or, artificial intelligence. I mean, those are things you can do, in exchange traded funds and all that. And Peter's smiling at me because he's a
Not an
crypto
endorsement
guy.
for any investment approach, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is not advice. We're just giving examples. We probably should say, but you can also go as safe as, traditional fixed annuities, CDs, lots of different types of things that we do. We use Charles Schwab and Fidelity, and we use CDs that they offer, money market accounts, individual stocks, quality mutual funds, exchange traded funds, individual stocks, individual bonds, that type of thing that maybe a 401k from a small employer might have 6 or 8 different funds to choose from, because they're trying to control costs and whatnot as well.
Well, Chris, let's talk about the benefits and the logistics of rolling over a 401k. Um, it is something that is talked about often. Should you roll it over? Should you take control of it? Should it go to the next 401k or an IRA? What are the benefits and disadvantages of doing rollovers, and how should we look at the process? Is it complicated? Can we mess this up?
Yeah. If you don't know what you're doing, you could very easily mess this up. And, and then the tax implications and some of those things can be hard to fix as well. So, if you've hit the age of 59 and a half, okay, or you've changed jobs and you have a 401k at a previous employer, no matter what your age is, you have the ability to move that money into an IRA account. And again, look at different investment choices. And what we do is we will call the company with the client on the phone, ask them what is the procedure to go through with, starting doing the rollover process. And if we know we're going to do it no matter what, we'll probably have an account number already set up for them where that money's going to flow. Sometimes the companies themselves, like, if it's Vanguard for Church and Dwight, which is located here, a company that makes Arm& Hammer baking soda, they'll send the check directly to Charles Schwab, for example, or to Fidelity. Okay. Some companies like General Motors, they will that's Fidelity. They will send the check made out to the next institution, but they send it to the client's address and then they have to bring it into us. So, a couple of different ways this happens. They have to read for you a special tax notice, and sometimes they may say, well, we also offer those services as well if we can help you. So, and so some of them can be kind of comical.
Are there any red flags or warnings that you specifically look out for when conducting a rollover that would say give you pause or tell you this is not a time for a rollover?
Yes, Peter. What we look at is for company stock inside a company plan, like Church and Dwight, for example. We do a lot of business with those folks, and they have highly appreciated company stock typically in their 401k. And there's a special mechanism called net unrealized appreciation. And that's why I brought up Vanguard. We just got done completing one of these, and man, and it took some doings here because you have to have a couple of different accounts set up and whatnot. And, sometimes somebody, on the other end, not our end, doesn't necessarily do what they say they're going to. So, you got to work your way through all of that and be able to, come out victorious on the other side, which we typically do, obviously. And if, how old is the person that we're doing the rollover? So if somebody was 50 years old and had an older retirement plan, and today they're 55 and they may need some of that money. So do we do early distributions called 72T type distributions to avoid that 10% penalty? So, for us, we need to have some additional expertise. We keep another IRA technical consultant, Denise Appleby, on our, that we can reach out to.
Chris, thought of another benefit of the 401k, and one that, because of all the doubt and worry of have I saved enough, we probably need to look at this as a true advantage. Inside of the 401k, we can save and contribute and invest significantly more than most other options. So, where we've got the ability, let's supercharge that retirement savings and get really ready for retirement.
Yeah, and they've even made some additional contributions available for, I think, if you're 60, 61, 62, 63, you can even put more than the catch up in there. So, the government really has been very favorable in helping people put additional dollars in there, that those that can afford to do so as well. I mean, some people still need the money to live on and whatnot, and not everybody has that ability. But boy, it sure is nice to see them, widening this piece out where, a significant more of your compensation can go into a 401k plan.
However, Chris, again, the 401k is not a pension. It is not a dependable source of retirement income. And maybe that's why we're seeing so much doubt and worry and concern, because we've been using these 401ks our whole life, and it might not be the best tool for moving forward.
Yeah, they've been accumulation vehicles, not necessarily distribution vehicles, is the perfect synopsis of all of this.
Well, your 401k is a great tool, but it is not a plan. If you were building the house, would you hire the person who brings the blueprint or says, I have a hammer? Right? You'd want the hammer. You need the hammer. It's an important tool, but it is not the plan. Ladies and gentlemen, you deserve a plan for your financial future where you can see that vision clearly. And that is what the game plan for retirement will help you do. It brings together all of the critical pieces, your income, your investments, your taxes, your healthcare, your legacy, into a clear picture of your financial future. If you'd like to get your game plan for retirement put together, that is a complimentary courtesy service there at McIntire Retirement Services. Just get the conversation started by calling 419-332-0532. 419-332-0532. 419-332-0532. Or you can go online, McIntireRetirementServices.com. McIntireRetirementServices.com. Get the plan in your hands, your game plan for retirement, to give yourself confidence to live life retired moving forward. Chris, we always appreciate the time here on the program and the detailed conversation about our 401ks today.
Hey, my pleasure. Good to be with everybody. Thank you. Be safe, and God bless America.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.